Hi, everyone. I am going to do a quick introduction again to make sure it's part of our recording. Thank you for joining us today, both live and if you're tuning in to listen to our recording and listen on demand. Thanks for joining us. There's tons of great information that you're going to get today. We are partnering with multiple organizations today. So we have NCLA, which is an organization that serves administrators from across the country. And then we also have ACTE, which is our National Organization for Career and Technical Education. And of course, EverFi, who is hosting our webinar today. And then also some guests from other places that I'll introduce in a moment. But first, I want to just mention to you that with this being a webinar, that you are going to have an opportunity to share out questions. So be thinking about the questions that you might have that you would like to share with our panelists so that we can discuss those at the end of the webinar. And again, I am the moderator for today's webinar, Rachel Mann, and I am with NCLA as the Director of Member Engagement and also the Director of CTE at Milton Hershey School. And we have a couple of other guests that are joining us that I'm going to have them unmute to introduce themselves. So Ebony Davis, can you please tell us where you're from, what you do, and your role in financial literacy?
Great. Thank you, Rachel. My name is Ebony Davis. I am a curriculum support specialist for the Miami-Dade Public Schools Division of Academics. I serve in the Department of Social Sciences, where I oversee the implementation of financial literacy education. I have 16 years in education experience, 14 years in the classroom in the high school level. This is my second year in this position. And again, thank you, Rachel, for having me here.
Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Dre. I am a business teacher in the CTE department at the Milton Hershey School. This is my 17th year in the classroom. I'm very involved in business education in the state of Pennsylvania, and I actually just wrapped up attending the National Business Education Conference this week. And I also advise our investment club at the Milton Hershey School, which I will discuss in a little bit, but we learned all about stocks and investments.
Well, we appreciate you, both of you, joining us today and sharing your expertise. And for the folks who are tuning in, there will be tons of resources that are shared throughout the webinar. And then you'll also receive a list of resources that you'll be able to click on the link and access very easily. And to start off, I would like to talk about the financial requirements. What are the financial literacy standards? And I know that those sometimes go by different names in different states. So if you're joining us and tuning in, know that it's a common terminology that just looks a little bit differently from state to state. So Ebony, can you start off by talking about the requirements for financial literacy in your state and district?
So in spring of 2022, a new law was enacted establishing financial literacy course as a graduation requirement. What that law simply says that beginning next year, 2023-2024 academic school year, the incoming ninth graders will be required to graduate with a personal financial literacy management, money management credit, okay? So that course will be a semester course and it will be a standalone course. Currently in our district, we are still underneath the 2019 law that simply says that our districts, all districts in the state of Florida, are required to offer an elective, a financial literacy elective in our course catalog. So with that being said, it's up to the school sites to offer it to the students. And currently we have roughly around 20 schools offering a financial literacy elective and impacting over 1,100 students in our district.
Pennsylvania is a little bit different. We currently do not have any bills officially passed. In October of 22, Chris Gebhard introduced Senate Bill 1243, And that's to improve personal financial literacy by requiring a half credit, either financial literacy or economics course as a high school graduation requirement. That bill has passed the Senate and is now in the House. So we are hoping that that will go through, and that would impact freshmen coming in, not this school year, but the next school year. So 24-25 freshman, class of 2028, they would be. As of now, Pennsylvania, it's just up to each individual district requirement as to their discretion of what they are requiring for financial literacy.
Well, and I can tell by both of your responses that you are supportive of this becoming a requirement versus it being more happenstance. Can you share a little bit about why you feel that this is so important that this be a requirement? And Ebony, we'll start with you.
Sure. Coming off the heels of a COVID, we all know the importance of financial literacy, right? It is one of the subjects that we all need to know, right? Regardless of age or race, gender, career pathways, right? We all have to budget that money. We all have to, we're spending every day, right? Understanding the purpose of saving, having something set aside for retirement. So the importance of financial literacy in this day and age is tremendous, in that our students need to understand it, their parents need to understand it, and how to navigate this life success.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, financial literacy is so important, and it's continually building. I mean, you have your teenage year financial literacy when you need to learn about your FAFSA and about signing up for your first bank account and your first credit card, your cars, your loans, your insurance. And then, I mean, as an adult now, I have to start thinking about, how am I saving for my children's future education? How am I planning for retirement? So financial literacy, I mean, you're always learning about financial literacy from your teenage years into adulthood.
All right. So this is obviously an important initiative. And so I'd like to talk about what's working in districts. Jennifer, can you talk about, when building a curriculum map for financial literacy, how do you decide which topics to teach and in which order? Because we know that it's such a vast area. So tell us how you decipher this and determine what to cover.
So I think it's important to start out small, little things like the art of budgeting, maybe like the influence of advertising and how that influences our buying decisions, just smart money habits. And then I think it's great to progressively introduce it to students, especially as they're getting ready to launch to their next step outside of high school. So I think it's important to get multiple exposures. So we're very fortunate at Milton Hershey School that we are both a school and a home. So we have a residential component where we have curriculum set where the students are learning about life skills and financial decisions. And then we offer a lot of our financial literacy education in a capstone course, which students take in their junior and senior year, where they're introduced throughout all of these different processes. And it's continuously reinforced in their other subject areas, like buying a home, renting a home, insurance, saving and investing, credit cards. So all of those topics are just, really reinforced and really stressed that the students get a thorough understanding of.
Yeah, I agree with that. With our district, our state Department of Education has established our standards. So by law, we have to go to the standards first. So when we are talking about deciding the topics to teach, our strand for our district is financial literacy. The standards, we have 6 standards for our financial literacy, which are established by national standards. So those 6 standards are earning income, buying goods and services, saving, using credit, investing, protecting, and insuring. So each one of those standards are in sequential order, right? So when we're developing our curriculum, we're establishing from the ground root those standards, right? And because those standards are in sequential order, it's easy for us then to backwards plan, right? Unpacking those standards, looking at the content and the skills that the students need to learn, and then developing our lesson plans and curriculum around that.
Excellent. And as I'm listening to both of you talk, I just think about how important this is, and just so many people who are probably listening in thinking, wow, why wasn't I learning this as a teenager versus the trial and error or trial by fire even of learning it as you go, and sometimes making some really costly mistakes along the way. When thinking about integrating financial literacy when there isn't a standalone financial literacy course, what's the best way to approach this? What have you found works, or even some things that haven't worked? And Ebony, can you start us off?
Sure, great question. So prior to us having this law, we had our financial literacy standards embedded into economics, which is a graduation course. That law switched to the current law that we have, where it's just offering as an elective. And what we found in our district is that a lot of teachers, as well as students, begin to advocate, right? How can they utilize these concepts into their classroom and integrate that into their courses? So we saw that a lot of teachers, regardless if they're not teaching economics, look at their subject matter standards and see if there is any correlation to financial literacy. So for instance, history, you can talk about the economics perspective from nations, right? And then build that in as well. Another way that we saw that our teachers were doing integrating financial literacy education is classroom economy. So it doesn't matter what subject matter you're teaching, right? You're teaching those principles, earning income, holding a job, right? Investing, saving, developing that classroom economy in your classroom. Also, another way that we've actually seen with especially our elementary teachers, having a classroom initiative like Money Mondays or Financial Fridays, right? Small ways that you can interject those financial literacy components into your classroom. And what we're doing now, right? Celebrating Financial Literacy Month, right? And you can always have a fun fact for today. So you kind of infusing that. Another thing that our district has done prior to the laws that we do have is we have established some lesson plans, like at least 15 lesson plans for each grade level, K through 12. So at the end of the school year, where typically teachers are kind of resting, thinking about summer, right? You're throwing on a movie for the kids. We tell our teachers, hey, pull out these financial literacy lesson plans, right? Get our kids kind of thinking about these principles and how they can utilize it in their everyday life.
Yeah, I can piggyback on some of that also, like the classroom economy. So many schools are using the PBIS system, and they're having that economy. I know my son's school, they have Eagle Bucks. So he earns Eagle Bucks and he can trade them in for prizes. And that's starting them really young, starting them in K and pre-K, teaching them the importance of earning something. Whether it be a family consumer science course or a business course or a math course, I see teachers integrating these concepts all of the time. Another big one, especially in the middle to the high school range, is school stores and spiritware stores. School-led stores are a huge initiative, because you have the students, taking ownership on the inventory and the processing and all of the financials that goes with running a school store. That's promoting great financial literacy concepts, even though it may not be, a standalone course. And like I mentioned before, I do run the investment club, and the stock market game is this free game that is offered through the SIFMA Foundation. And there are thousands of schools across the nation who play this stock market game to help increase knowledge, in the securities industries and the financial markets.
Jennifer, I definitely agree with that. As you were talking, I was just thinking of the stock market challenge that we also participating in our district, but that's through junior achievements. And also I was just thinking of another way of integrating these concepts into the classroom is doing a project-based experiment in your class, right? Having your kids kind of save up and share out for charity work. Probably at the end of the school year, many of the students are required to have community service hours, right? That's a great way of kind of building that bridge of what you're learning in class as well as in community. So I definitely agree.
All right, I have so many great takeaways already listening to the two of you talk. One is just thinking about how you're creating this vertical alignment. So Jennifer, talking about your son already learning it at such a young age, and that's going to give him a nice foundation for as he gets older, and especially if it becomes a requirement that this is something that he'll need. But regardless, he's already learning at a young age. And then gamifying, you're both talking about how these stock market games, free resources, but it really makes it fun. And brain science shows us that the more fun we can add to it, to where students forget that they're learning, it's really going to be something that resonates with them, and then that they're able to build upon and grow in that area as time goes on. I also want to mention too, because Jennifer mentioned the school store, and a few months ago, while I was at the school store that they had set up for a Saturday event, I thought it was really cool that the students were using a Square to process credit cards versus just taking cash, because you think of financial literacy and handling money, but really making sure that we're staying on top of current trends versus things that may not serve them as well as they're working in a financial area. Is there anything else that you're doing in that realm as far as making sure that what's happening is staying up to date with what they're experiencing in business and industry, whether it's through apps or Venmo or Square or anything like that?
I mean, I specifically teach, electronic funds transfer, which is your Venmo, your PayPal. But I still teach the old fashioned checkbook, because I do have some accounts that have to be paid, via check. And I think it's important for students to still know how to write out a check, and still be able to, reconcile your bank statement and not just rely on, is the bank correct? Is that the actual amount that I have? So I do reinforce that. And maybe I am a little old school in that aspect, but I think it's important for students to be able to calculate it that way.
Yeah, so one of the things that we do look at when we're partnering up with a lot of our financial literacy providers is making sure that the content is current and up to date, and that they're exposing our students to this type of information of the P2P platforms or what have you. And because our students are already utilizing them, right? So they can pretty much teach us how to engage in that. And I too, like Jennifer, I still use checks. My students, when I was in the classroom, will look at me like, what are you talking about? Why you're doing it? You can just, Zelle or Vino. But it was one of those things that you do learn. It is a skill, right? How to budget. I believe it's a part of understanding what's coming in, what are your assets, what are your liabilities, and looking at them face on. So again, one of the things that we do kind of look at is when we're looking at the resources and being able to partner with a lot of these providers and making sure that that information is current, and that can be utilized in the classroom.
What you're talking about with making sure that they really understand some of those basics. So Jennifer, you and I had the conversation about students writing checks a while back. And when you think about it, it's foundational. It's something that they're going to have a better understanding overall. And when they go into the electronic version, it's going to make more sense. They're going to be able to make those connections. And then also brain science also shows that just physically writing something down helps students to remember it. So it's still a best practice. All right, the next question, and I'll start with you, Jennifer, for this one is, how do you measure the effectiveness of your financial literacy curriculum?
So I think this is ongoing, and I think you constantly keep reinforcing things, but I kind of like to make it more of a game. And like we talked about that gamification aspect, to make it fun, to make sure that the learning part of it is fun, that it's not about, taking a summative assessment at the end. It's more about, learning these different concepts and continuing to reinforce it throughout the student's educational journey. I think a major concept that it's so important to reinforce continuously right before graduation is the credit cards, because once these kids turn 18, then they're eligible for credit cards, and that's when they do get approached. If they go to college, there'll be vendors set up, and here, sign up for this credit card, and it's important to give them warnings, and that, I think, that feedback alone, when your students return to you and you say, I signed up for my first credit card, I made sure it was, a great APR, no yearly fees, that's the reinforcement of how you can measure that the students were actually paying attention and took that away.
Jennifer, I couldn't concur more. That feedback from your students is extremely exhilarating, right? To know that they have received and understand and applying the information that was taught in the classroom. I definitely be remiss, however, because our district is data driven. So we utilize our testing platform, which is Performance Matters. So we have diagnostic, formative, and summative assessments, but understanding the effectiveness of your curriculum, the evidence of that is shown in many ways, right? The classroom interaction, students' participation, their responses for exits tickets and survey questions. But most importantly, I think what I've seen in the past year or so is students sharing this information with their family, right? I've heard from teachers to say that, listen, I know that it's working, whether or not they're just taking the bits and pieces, when they can come back to classroom and say, hey, I was talking to my mom about this and she wasn't aware of this. Can we get more information on this? So I think when we're really looking at how the financial literacy curriculum, or just the education of it all, is impacting our students, when we can see and change in them, I think that is ultimately the goal, right? We can use the data to drive this advocacy and drive this work in the classroom and go back and remediate if we have to, but to see that our students is applying this information and they're sharing it is the ultimate goal of effectiveness.
And we know that accessibility is so important. And fortunately, people are having more and more conversations in general around accessibility, but really thinking through with financial literacy, how do we ensure that financial literacy education is accessible to all students, regardless of their socioeconomic background or status? What are some thoughts on really making this a priority? And Ebony, you can start us off.
Oh, sure. That's a great question. My first thought is being intentional, right? And the advocacy work is extremely important. It starts with all of us. And I'm just immediately thinking of how our students kind of galvanized together, especially during COVID and after COVID, and how many of them reached out to our school board members and was just like, listen, we need this information. The power of Gen Zs is overwhelming, especially when they want something and they want the education, financial literacy education. So I would say being intentional about it and advocacy, bringing in your allies, whether it is your department chairs, having that conversation with your site administrators, whether it is reaching out to your school board members and saying that this is key, this is important, it should be mandated. Reaching out to your state legislative leaders and just saying, hey, we need support in this effort, and leveraging your partnerships with your financial providers, right? Many of them are providing statistics and reports on the impact of financial literacy in schools and the reason why we need it and why it's so important. So I would say start there. One, being intentional, and two, do the work in terms of advocacy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think partnerships are huge.
Mhm.
Every local bank, credit union, they have grant money available to come into schools and run these seminars. I know a lot of local schools will run FAFSA nights multiple times a year for parents and guardians to help their students complete their college applications. They are constantly running seminars on health insurance and future planning. I think it's every school's job and duty to help advertise that information and get that out there to the parents, and us as teachers and administrators to continuously support that. Social media is the easiest way now to get that information out there and to spread the word. And it takes seconds to click that share button to make sure that everyone's aware of these opportunities available.
Thank you for that. And for the folks who are tuning in live, remember, we will be doing a Q&A at the end. So please add your questions to the Q&A section so that we could be sure to address those when we get towards the end. And Jennifer, can you share the criteria that you use when selecting the resources? We know that there's so many resources out there. Sometimes we can become inundated with the different options. So how do you really hone in and pick out what's the best resources to use in your program?
Well, I think with teachers, the one thing that they always like to hear is the word free. So they love when resources are free. And they also like resources that are really easy to just plug and play, that they can easily integrate it into their learning management system. Teachers love when there are supplemental resources and it's not just a module that students, click through, that there's actually some context behind it where that the teachers can dive a little bit deeper. Some teachers have 4, 5, 6 classes that they are prepping for at a time. So when a lot of that back work is done for them, and they can easily integrate something into their classroom, that makes it so much better for them and more valuable.
I definitely agree with Jennifer. For me, in terms of being out of the classroom and what we're looking for in terms of recommendations, we have to have everything aligned with our state standards. It's the first thing we do is like clockwork for us. And then we also look at whether or not it is accessible for the learner as well as the teacher. In that the teacher needs to have access to this information, but it needs to be customizable to the learner in the classroom, because not everything is fit for all students. So the complexity of the content needs to be at a level where, regardless if you're teaching a regular honors or AP class, it's customizable for the teacher. Whether or not the extra resources is adaptable to remote learning environments, right? Not just a physical textbook, but can we utilize this digitally? Is this information in the resources that you're providing engaging? Is it something that will actually hold our students' attention? Because one of the things that we did see during COVID and even coming out of the COVID is that a lot of the resources that were available, although they were online, it wasn't a learning experience. It wasn't engaging for the learner as well as the teachers. So just in terms of what we do, first thing we do is look at those standards, make sure they're aligned. Is it accessible to the learner and the teacher? So yeah, just making sure that it is engaging and the teacher can utilize it fluently on the platforms that we have.
And Ebony, I want to build off of your conversation on the importance of having access to financial literacy materials in a remote environment. How has access to technology impacted the quality of financial education resources in your district?
Tremendously. In that pre-COVID, we were in this process of digital convergence, right? Our district was upgrading our smart boards, the device per student. We were moving forward, and then COVID hit, and it was like, okay, how do we take the information that we have and convert it to a digital learning experience and being able to engage our kids. Post COVID, we see that a lot of our providers, and in particular our financial literacy providers, are making sure that there is a digital learning experience, right? It's just not uploading a worksheet and filling a blank, right? It's like you said before, it's gamified, it's engaging, it's interactive. In crouching all of that, there are diagnostic exams, right? There is this formative assessment, and the kids most times don't even realize it because they're having so much fun. So I would say that just in terms of the impact of technology and where we're going with it, financial providers are definitely enhancing and developing more of a digital learning experience.
I think one big thing that I know a lot of states did implement and local districts, they did provide a lot of the hotspots out during COVID to make sure that individuals who did not have, access to Wi-Fi, they were given those hotspots. Now, it is difficult when you live in a very rural area. So depending on where you're from, you might not have the best Wi-Fi. And that's really difficult to understand if you live in like a booming metropolitan area. But, there are places just where I am in Pennsylvania that you only have one provider. And if that provider goes down, that's your only option for internet service. So I do think it's important to provide schools with, the old fashioned pamphlet, trifold brochure, different material that you can look over. I know I keep talking about my son, but he came home with this little coloring book, and it was different financial activities. So we looked at it, we read it, he colored pictures about different coins and dollar bills, and we talked about the presidents on it, but just little things like that. So for the young age, you want something tangible like that. The technology resources, you don't just want something where you press play and the student can walk away from the screen. You want something that you're constantly interacting with, and that it's asking you questions, and that you can customize your avatars. So just the press play and forget it kind of method it's just not really feasible, especially with high school students, because they literally press play and walk away.
And Jennifer, Jennifer and Ebony, I know both of you use Everfi as a resource. And can you share what that is? What is Everfi, and how do you use it, and what's the value that it adds to your program?
I will say Everfi is that digital. It is the digital learning experience. It connects education with real life experiences, right? So how I used it when I was in school, at the time when I taught economics, especially for those senior instructors, if you have economics at the end of the school year, you lose your students or seniors, right? Because their mindset is all things senior activities, whether they're going to prom, grad bash, looking for cars or what have you. So I took that opportunity, kind of infusing the theory aspect of economics, but wanted to highlight the practical components of financial literacy and what those kids will actually need. So we utilized in the classroom at the time the financial literacy modules that Everfi provided. And they also have lessons where you can take those lessons and teach from a whole group perspective before releasing them off to complete the modules. So we find that a lot of our teachers are still doing the same with the various products that Everfi is offering, and particularly with financial literacy in our district. A lot of our schools are utilizing, I would say over 120 something schools are utilizing, impacting over 20 or so thousand students with EverFi. So I've used EverFi, and I know that a lot of our teachers are enjoying the products that are being offered.
Yeah, one of the things that I like best about EverFi is that it's not just press play, that it's asking you questions, and you can click through different kind of like roadmaps, and pick your journey. And okay, I want to learn more about debit cards. Let me click on this and I'll learn more. And you can continue, you can kind of differentiate your whole educational experience. So every student in your classroom can have a different experience, based off of a click of the button. I also like that EverFi gives you so much more. They give you all of those extra supplemental resources that you can use as a classroom teacher. So, if your students, are really interested in, cars and loans, you can click through your teacher resources and you have all of this additional material that you can use, that you don't need to scour the internet and try to find the best material, that it's right there at your fingertips.
Yeah, I ran across EverFi. It was about 5 years ago. One of the representatives reached out and wanted to meet. And my first thought was, oh, there's got to be a catch. There's not just free resources. There's going to be some kind of a catch. They're advertising, they're doing something. And I met with the representatives and learned more about how it's really funded by financial institutions in order to really support and back financial literacy, and was blown away by what they're able to do for schools and districts and ultimately for students. Are there other ways that EverFi has supported you in your role or in your district, in addition to the free financial literacy resources?
Definitely. They have, over the years since I've been here, the 2 years that I've been doing this work, they have hosted a lot of our professional developments, and collabed with us on that outside of, the financial literacy components, but also with the history, the 306 African American history curriculum with our department. We've offered financial literacy academies where Sasha Beam, who's the implementation specialist, who really supported that work for us in the past 2 years. They also provide scholarship opportunities for our students, which our district is over the hill with, as well as teacher appreciation opportunities, right? I know I'm recalling the last sports opportunity that they did a giveaway for the Miami Dolphins tickets. I had so many emails from my teachers. It's like, I've been using EverFi since such and such and such and such and such. How can I get these tickets? So the teachers are extremely excited. And they have just not with their resources, but really backed up with their word in terms of supporting the teachers in our district.
Yeah, I love the professional development aspect. You can always find them at conferences and trade shows. And it's not just the trade show vendor that's trying to sell you something that you're trying to run away from. It's that they're offering sessions and helping the cause and helping to develop teachers professionally so that they know what materials out there. I also love that they stay current. So there is a cryptocurrency module, there are accounting careers, there's entrepreneurship curriculum. There's so many different options that EverFi does offer that you can utilize.
I have to say, they also have really good swag. They were at a conference a few years ago. And
that is important, Ray. That is definitely
it is.
important.
Jennifer mentioned the vendors that you're running away from. I'm like, oh, I do not run away from EverFi, because I have a mug from 3 years ago that I still use on a weekly basis because it's just it's my go-to mug. So definitely have to have some good swag so that people don't run away. All right, we're going to switch gears from swag and talk about engaging families and the community. So what are some effective strategies for reaching out to families and involving them in their children's financial education? Ebony, do you want to start us off on that?
Oh, sure. So our district has a department, the Department of Family Services, and they have a subsidiary of that, which is the Parent Academy, where they have liaisons who reach out to our families in our districts, where they offer workshops, update the parents on what's going on with mandates, things that they need to know, and just in general. Also, I think a good way too is, again, leverage your partnerships that you have, especially with your financial literacy partners, in particular if you're trying to get that information out to your parents. I know we partner with an organization with Future Bound, where they release children savings accounts. And Crouch, and one of their ethos and their focus is outreach, right? They offer workshops to the parents in our communities. So I think, one, recognizing if your district offers a parent academy, two, leveraging that relationships with your partners. And also each schools, for the most part, have like a PTA, right? They organizations where they have that opportunity to share out with the teachers and parents and keep them updated on what's going on. Yeah, so I think those are effective strategies that you can utilize to inform your parents and families about what's going on in the education system.
Yeah, I know in Pennsylvania here, one of our credit unions is the Members First Federal Credit Union. I picked up a flyer. They have a huge flyer. I don't know if you can see there. That's a tech failure. There we go. So they have all of these free financial literacy lessons, banking services, buying a home. They'll come out to your school. They will teach you about it. They will run seminars. So many of major accounting firms, they have an entire department delegated just to this. So your Deloitte, your PricewaterhouseCooper, Morgan Stanley runs Jumpstart. They all have various individuals who will come out and speak to your districts, and not just speak to parents. They'll help professionally develop your staff as well. So those are great options. And it really is, I think it's so beneficial as a teacher when you have those guest speakers come in from these financial institutions, because sometimes, you know, the students do get a little bit sick of hearing their teacher preach to them. But when you bring in those external individuals, it really does help reinforce it. And now COVID was kind of a blessing that it is so easy to bring in virtual guest speakers. It's just a click of the button, and it's so easy. You can have individuals from all over the world in your classroom in a matter of seconds. So I think it's really important for us to utilize that free virtual platform too.
Yeah. Also, as she was talking, I was thinking, oftentimes in the beginning of the school year here in our district, we have town hall meetings where school board members come out and introduce themselves to the parents, to get a feel of what's going on in the communities, and kind of share out what's going on with education. So I think those would be a great opportunity to kind of use and engage and then reach out to the families and get them involved into what's going on. And also another thing that we do use here in the district is Connect Ed, is say online, telecommunication platform where schools are able to kind of disseminate that information to the family. So it immediately calls them with a message as, hey, this is coming from Miami-Dade Public Schools, or that particular school, and informing the parent of X, Y, and Z about what's going on in the school. These are the activities that are being offered here at our schools. So I think that's a great opportunity as well, is to inform the families of what's going on.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Something else, depending on what state you're from too, I know in Pennsylvania, our Auditor General, Tim DeFore, he has a website set up, through the state, Be Money Smart. Pennsylvania Department of Banking has like a Build Your Financial House website. So a lot of states do have their own specific information regarding financial education. I don't think you can find an elected official anywhere that is not pro financial education. So I think it's just great to reach out to any of your local representatives, and they'll be on board with helping you promote it.
All right. And you've both talked about the community involvement in local businesses. Is there anything else that you wanted to share about how you're involving business and community leaders into your district's financial literacy plans?
Well, I could talk about specifically with my stock market game. One of the blessings of being in Hershey is we have access to the Hershey Trust Company, which
Nice.
is a Pennsylvania chartered trust company that is in charge of Milton Hershey's, $13+ billion endowment. So I get to work with the financial executives from the Hershey Trust Company, and they come in and they help me run the stock market game. So you have these experts who are dealing with billions and billions of financial investments. They teach our students through the process of the financial market. And then one of the things that we utilize is we get our students internships at these organizations so that they can, dabble in, the investment and securities market.
I definitely agree with utilizing your local business and community leaders in this effort to spread financial literacy. The way that our district does it in our office, I would say at the end of the year when we sit down and we look at our professional development plans and the activities that we offer, we say, okay, where did we miss? What can we fill and provide more events or opportunities for our students as well as our teachers. And we think back to some of the local businesses and community leaders that reached out to us. And one, we have to obviously make sure that it's in line with our standards. And then we see how we can collaborate and on events, future events and contests in the upcoming year.
So that is fantastic. And it's always so much more meaningful, as you've said, when we have business and industry involved as well. And Dina, if you would like to go ahead and share the resource slide so that the folks who are tuning in are able to see some of those rich resources. And then we'll jump into the Q&A at the same time. We have a couple of questions. And if you have additional questions that you would like for me to direct to our panelists, please add those to the Q&A. And the first question we have is, can we have the contact information for the speakers? I'm very interested in the curriculum and how it's initiated within my district. And this is from Michael Arkebeck. Ladies, are you comfortable sharing out your contact information?
Sure.
All right, so if you want to add that into the chat, and then we'll share this as well in the YouTube information. If you're tuning in on demand, just be sure to expand on the details of this webinar so that you can connect directly with both Ebony and Jennifer. And someone is asking, are taxes and their impact on personal finance included in these programs and lessons? And they mentioned that they have free tax literacy resources, including videos, lesson plans, and more. Okay, so I think this is an anonymous attendee. It sounds like they may have some resources, but are taxes and their impact on personal finance included in your programs and lessons? You mentioned taxes briefly, but if you would like to expand upon this.
I can jump in. Taxes is a subject matter that is definitely focused in our standards. So it's obviously the basic understanding of taxes, your forms and incomes and how you're taxed on that. So yes, to answer the question, taxes is a subject matter that is focused in the curriculum for financial literacy.
Yep, it can walk you through, students completing their W-4 form, filing their taxes, all of those resources.
All right. And for the folks listening in, we do through NCLA throughout the month of Financial Literacy Month, throughout the month of April, we post resources from the IRS that are resources that you can use both individually, but also use with your students. So be sure to check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn for some of those resources. And another question that we have, many of the educators struggle with finances themselves.
Yeah.
Good question,
Yep.
leading right,
Yep.
it's right along with what we're just saying. How do you ensure that teachers feel confident to teach personal finance to their students? Excellent question.
That is a
Lady,
great
I'll give it over to
question.
you.
That's a great question. So when I came into this role, we did a survey because we wanted to hear from the teachers and their perspective of teaching financial literacy, because we kind of figured that the mandate would come down, and many of our teachers felt they were uncomfortable, right, with teaching it because of their own personal experiences with financial literacy. So what we have done is we partner with Dade County Federal Credit Union. So oftentimes they're coming in doing some professional development where they offer their services, information to kind of walking teachers through some of the products they do have, and having teachers to understand what's going on. And also with just professional development anyway, the resources that we have from Next Gen Personal Finance, from Everfi, it helps build up that confidence to teach the financial literacy curriculum.
Yeah, that collaboration aspect is key.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a subject matter expert in stocks and investments. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be a teacher. So that's why collaborating with those individuals who are subject matter experts are so crucial. And to continuously collaborate with your local financial institutions. I like the fact that Everfi runs webinars that teachers can attend to learn how to use the platform, how to navigate it. Anything that, you know, a teacher can learn it first, become comfortable with it. At first, when I started using Everfi, I wasn't sure if I wanted to use it with my students, and I clicked and played around with it for months before I decided to sign my students up for it. So I think that learning platform is great, where the teacher can dabble with it and play around with it themselves before, you know, jumping the gun and committing to something. In this case, it's free. So what is there to lose? I love that a lot of the financial literacy programs that are available out there really do give you that opportunity to play around and become comfortable with it.
Well, Jennifer, I wish I had have taken your class before I started dabbling in the stock market and picking out the products that I liked the most. Fortunately, I was investments that were not impacting my retirement or anything too important. But next question that I have for you is: personal finance is typically taught in high schools. So one of the folks listening or tuning in wants to know what your districts do to educate elementary and middle school students.
Great question. So for us, we have, as I stated before, created lesson plans for K through 12. So we have, we always tell our teachers those last 3 weeks of the school year, you can utilize those. So there are 15 lesson plans, financial literacy lesson plans for each grade level, K through 12, on that lets out on the skills that they need to learn within that class. Also this year, actually last year, we opened up a course for middle school. It's an introduction to personal financial literacy course. We do offer professional development, not only for high school, but also for elementary teachers and middle school teachers. I've had the opportunity last year as a part of Future Bound kickoff with the kickoff for the children and students accounts, had an opportunity to go into a classroom and model some of the lessons for the elementary students. So there are offerings for elementary as well as middle school in our district. So we do offer, again, lessons, professional development for them, and a course for the middle school level.
Yeah, so Everfi has one specifically geared towards elementary, which is Vault.
Mhm.
That one's geared specifically towards like the 4th, 5th, 6th grade level. I know another one that Ebony had also mentioned was junior leadership.
Junior achievement.
Yeah, junior achievement. So they do come in. We do have some
Mhm.
local volunteers those
Yep.
individuals, it's all volunteers who work in the business industry, and they also come in to different grade levels, and we'll do mini lessons on all aspects of business and financial literacy, entrepreneurship.
All right, and another great question that we have, how do you promote and get a parent academy started? I think that sounds like a great idea.
Mhm.
The person asks, I'm going to be creating a financial literacy guidebook for our district. I would love to do a parent academy series in the evenings with financial literacy components.
Oh, that is great. In our district, as I stated before, we actually have a department. That the department is entitled Department of Family Services. They actually create the Parent Academy, where they have a database of all of the students and the families or what have you, and they send out their information. So what I would say, one, reach out to your department, your district, to see if they have a component or department like that. If they don't, there are parent teacher associations around that you can probably link up with them to find out how they are out there, what their outreach approach is. So while you're building that guidebook, that would kind of assist you in that matter.
Yeah, I would say also reach out to your district college and career counselors.
Yeah.
They're usually really familiar with the FAFSA, and a lot of times they organize those financial aid nights. And they're probably already on your district schedule for the fall and the spring. So those are great opportunities to piggyback off of and run additional, financial seminars. I know adult education is huge. At one point in time, I was teaching some Microsoft computer applications courses to adults in my community. So anytime you can do adult education outreach, that's great for your district. So definitely, I encourage you to reach out to your district leaders.
Well, ladies, this has been such an excellent conversation, and we've really pushed it right to almost our hour mark. Is there anything else that you would like to add in before we wrap up for the day?
I would just like to say advocacy is extremely important, and make sure you leverage your partnerships that you have with your local businesses, community leaders, as well as the financial literacy providers, because financial literacy is extremely important. And if your state does not have a mandate, it's still room and time to get that done. Just be intentional when you're advocating. And yeah, I think it's extremely important. So please advocate, advocate, advocate.
Yes, I agree. Definitely use those resources. Use any partnerships that you possibly can. Don't reinvent the wheel. There are so much out there.
Right. Thank you, ladies. And our Vice President of Administration at ACTE says, thank you to the speakers and moderator for a terrific webinar. Thank you for the resources. This was outstanding. I concur. You ladies did a fantastic job. And for the folks who joined us today, please be sure to share the link to this webinar with your community and share EverFi resources with the folks that can use it the most. And it's obviously something that is widespread. And have a great day and stay connected with our members.